The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
I am doing very well. What a crazy opening 30 minutes of free agency for the Phoenix Suns. That is why we were back so soon. We wanted a little bit of time to gather our thoughts on the many guys who were signed by the Suns yesterday. So we're coming at you at the earliest on a Saturday afternoon here. But the Phoenix Suns punched the rest of the NBA in the nose a little bit. I felt like I was really satisfied with a lot that happened. Within reason, of course, because we're talking about minimum contracts again, but it was fun. It was fun to be on Twitter for the traditional Well, no, let me finish.
Glad it happened yesterday, not today.
That's what I'm saying, man. It was fun to be on Twitter for the traditional opening free agency day experience and to watch the Suns sign a bunch of guys before the entire website broke and now everything is fucked. So at least we got our guys.
Yeah, for those who don't care, I'm sorry, skip ahead 30 seconds, a minute or so here, but Twitter is kind of broken right now, not working very well for what will likely be interesting reasons going forward.
It's important.
Yeah,
skip ahead if you must, but this is important. It's important for newsbreakers, and it's important for slop consumers alike. Both sides of the slop ecosystem.
A lot of people found this
survive
podcast.
On this.
A lot of people found this podcast thanks to Twitter. So it not working or our tweets being severely limited, it really kind of sucks for us. Well, the one thing I will say is I was very grateful for our Discord today because we were able to just really easily jump in there and still have conversations with Suns fans about things. Like I was posting stats for Keita Bates-Diop, for example, in there, and we can have conversations about that in there. So for those of you who are on Twitter frustrated with the inability to speak to other Suns fans, you can join us on Discord. It is a Patreon thing, patreon.com/thetimeline. $3 a month will get you into our Discord where you can talk to all Suns fans all the time. It's really fun. $6 a month if you want an extra podcast every week. But right now, I just felt like it was a good time to bring that up early in the podcast, just to mention, because, look, there's a place where you can still go to have conversation when things are not working elsewhere. And look, nice part about it, no trolls from other fans, right? There's no Denver Nuggets fans in your mentions telling you about how you don't have a championship. So feel free to join us on Discord if you would like. But
I will throw out a quick shout out too. Just want to say, a lot of people are starting to hop over to Blue Sky. I don't know if it's going to end up being a Twitter alternative or not, to be honest, but both of us are on there. We're sending out invite codes to people kind of as fast as we can. It's just not that quick of a process. We'll see. Maybe there'll be a Twitter alternative one day.
Yeah.
Maybe not. All I know, Mike, is that I have complained to you before about kind of the state of social media these days and how if Twitter's going to die, so be it. Maybe it dies, maybe it doesn't, but there needs to be something to take its place as the discourse app. And I don't even mean that in the negative sense, but in the like really positive discourse, the type that kind of helps you foster a community and become friends with a lot of people, even if you've never met them in real life. Like that's what Twitter has been to me in the Suns community over the past few years. And it's just the type of thing that doesn't exist on like I've tried Instagram, I've tried TikTok. That level of discourse just doesn't exist. Those are totally zombified experiences compared to what Twitter can provide. Like on TikTok, I've tried posting videos. People either like the video and they scroll right by, or they drop a fire emoji in the comments, or they drop a clown emoji if they don't like what you said. But like there's nothing there to challenge you. There's nothing there to push you. And Twitter at its best, that's what it is. So hopefully either Elon gets his shit together or we'll be moving somewhere else. But that can be the end of our social media conversation here.
Okay, thanks everyone for sticking through that. But let's talk about free agency. Now, I think what I'm used to when it comes to the Suns free agency, right? There's been a few years, I guess one big year where we had actual cap space to talk about. The Suns ended up signing Ricky Rubio in that year. Fun free agency preview for us in that one, where you and I really had some cap space to play with, some names to actually talk about that year. And now, of course, and this has been the case for the last few years, outside of extensions for players that were already on the team, now we only really had to talk about minimum contracts. traditionally for the Suns, when they're signing minimum contracts, it's like a few days after free agency opens, because those don't have to happen right away, right? They don't. Like, most of the big stuff happens right away, and then at the end of that, all the minimum contracts are signed. But for the Suns, it sure appeared that they had their pick of who they wanted when it came to minimum contracts, because they signed 4 guys within like the first hour of free agency. And it was a different experience in following along with the Suns free agency process this time, because they had options. They found the guys they wanted, and they were able to sign them. And I think you mentioned it right. If you had your expectations right, if you understood the situation the Suns were in, the cap space options that they had, you were probably pretty happy with yesterday, I would say, right?
I am being serious when I say that just among the tier of teams that only had minimum contracts available, I'm not talking about the Houston Rockets, who threw $45 million a year at Fred VanVleet, right? Among the teams that had these minimums, the Suns did punch the rest of the league in the face, because there's a limited talent pool at that salary range. And you look at some of the other teams that only have that available to them, like who else even made moves? The Boston Celtics only have minimums available. They signed O'Shea Brissett. The Denver Nuggets lost Bruce Brown for over $20 million and retained Reggie Jackson for too much money.
Overpaid Reggie Jackson.
And re-signed DeAndre Jordan, 2 guys who didn't even play for them in the playoffs.
Right.
Like that, not to say that they can't get their offseason back on track, but the Suns absolutely threw the first punch and were far more impressive in what they did in the first 24 hours compared to some of these other contending teams that now have to scale back and say, whoa, okay, wait. What a bunch of the talent is already gone, so who are we going to get?
When you have 3 guys out of the 4 where you see smart people saying, wow, I'm surprised they accepted a minimum. And not only did they accept a minimum, they did it, like I said, in the first hour of free agency. 2 hours if you include Yuta here. But that's a good sign, right? These are probably 3 players that the Suns got on minimums that maybe, had they held out, they could have got a little bit more if there was some MLE money left from some of these teams. But no, they wanted to play for the Suns. They signed for the minimum, and they also retained some of their guys in Josh Okogie. So it's not just necessarily...
And Damian Lee.
And Damian Lee, exactly. So it's not just necessarily the 4 guys that we're going to talk about. But let's talk about the new guys first, and then we can talk about the guys that we're retaining. I'll just mention them. Yuta Watanabe, very excited, from the Nets. Keita Bates-Diop, who's from the Spurs. Drew Eubanks, who played as soon as he was signed on the Suns. Damian Lillard requested a trade off of the Portland Trailblazers.
That was the last straw.
It was the last straw. And then Chimezie Metu, who played for the Kings last year. Which is the one that that one is definitely a minimum contract. Like, that was what he was going to get. That was his market. Where do you want to start?
Well, we talked about 3 of the 4 of these guys. For anyone who listened to our pod 2 days ago, these guys were on our list, right? I think you're very right in saying that Metu was the only one who came out of left field a little bit.
Well, let's start Woj said Yuta and Keita Bates-Diop, and then Drew Eubanks is something that Jake Fisher wrote about the day of free agency in the morning. So we all kind of knew that all 3 of these guys were on the radar for the Suns. Sure.
Let's start with Drew Eubanks, I think, because he's an interesting guy. I don't know if Suns fans know a lot about him. Mentioned him as an honorable mention kind of just at the very end of our podcast a couple days ago, but let's start there.
You know, with these guys, we obviously watch a lot of basketball, you and I, but you can't watch these guys in the way that we watch the Suns, right? I can't have opinions on these guys in the way that I sort of know Suns players inside and out when talking about Suns players. You know, we try to do our best when talking about these guys outside of that. So often what I do and what you do as well, I think, is obviously look through the relevant stats to their position. And then we look at the B-Ball Index player profiles, which what they do is they track different parts of the court and then put each of those different things that they're doing, each of their minor, like small skills, into context of the whole NBA. And I looked at all these guys, and you sort of know what Yuta is. You sort of know what Keita Bates-Diop is. And then I get to Drew Eubanks, and I'm looking through his player profile stats, and I go, this guy's better than I thought he was based on a lot of these stats. Did you have that feeling too when looking through this?
I think some of the stats for sure. That doesn't necessarily mean he's good at everything, right? But
Of course.
I think his film pops too. Like then when you kind of transition from the stats, just to, even if it's just watching highlights. But
Yeah.
I was trying to watch some of his makes and some of his misses using the NBA's website. I will say the NBA's website year after year has been a godsend
Yeah.
for anyone who tries to cover this league in terms of how well they sort out different types of play types for all of these guys and how you can just quickly have access to watching film on all of them. I think Eubanks, it really pops. He has some level of offensive skill, but I think really he's here to shine as a defender first and foremost. I posted his defensive stats, his rim protection stats for the B-Ball Index almost immediately after he was signed. He shines as a guy who's going to kind of excel in drop defense and kind of some of the stuff we're used to seeing with Jock Landale and Bismack Biyombo, but I think he can do a really, really good job as a rim protector for this team. And I think his motor is going to be really strong. He's not going to take plays off. Honestly, without even talking about any of the other guys, if I would just say what's the consistent theme for all four of these signings, they're all good at different things that we can nitpick, but for the most part, all four of these guys I think have really strong motors. And are guys who aren't going to take plays off. And I think that was just something really important for the Suns to nail in these signings. Guys who really wanted to be here, really wanted to be in a place where they could accept a role, but then help a bunch of superstars win a championship potentially.
You know, the Suns, when we talk about retaining the players the Suns had, the only one that impressed me in the playoffs was Jock Landale. And so in order to sign someone who is likely a Jock Landale replacement, maybe not. Maybe Jock could still be back, depending on if the Suns make a trade or not. But to sign someone who's essentially right now viewed as a Jock Landale replacement, he had to have been good in order for me to feel okay with it, right? And I do feel okay about that when looking at who Drew Eubanks is. And I appreciate you mentioning watching the makes and the misses, because the reality with a lot of these guys is highlights lie. They just lie. They post the best moments of these guys' careers, and they don't tell you how consistent they are over the course of an actual season. And so you have to look at the mix. You have to look at the misses. You have to look at the good with the bad. And the reality of who Drew Eubanks is, from what I can tell, of course, everything can change when they're put in different contexts on new teams. But from what I can tell, he's someone who understands his role and doesn't really try to do much outside of that. He's going to be a pick and roll guy. Can he pass? Not really. Can he shoot? He tried a few.
Little bit.
Yeah.
Little bit.
He tried a little bit in this last season. I'm not
I'll
sure
point
that's
out,
there.
I'm just going to say 44 attempts for his entire career. He's been in the league 5 years. Career 34% shooter from deep. I think it would take some massive hopium to really believe in his ability as a spacer, but you never know. Like, I've seen guys before. I've seen centers. How many times in the past decade have we seen centers go through this exact transformation where, like, they shoot 35% from deep on a few attempts, and then one year they just start chucking 5 or 6 a game? So I don't think
there's always that Channing Frye. Yeah, that Channing Frye hopium that you can.
That's exactly what happened with Channing Frye. It's a great example. The Brook Lopez. It saved Brook Lopez's career. He just re-signed to the Bucks for $24 million a year.
I can't believe that, by the way,
because he did exactly that like 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
And so is Drew Eubanks going to be that? Probably not, but 34% for his career, not terrible.
38% last season, which is surprising.
Yeah, we'll
just
leave that there.
Very little attempts, and it's important to put that in there. It's not like he's taking.
But Jock Landale tried to be a floor spacer all of last season and wasn't. He shot 25% from deep on the entire year. So we weren't replacing a ton.
If those threes dropped, he might have been back. But it's important for big men. It's important for players around star players to really understand their role and not try to go outside of that role. And in fact, I would say all of the guys the Suns signed are guys who do that. And there's a theme with a lot of these guys. And one of the themes is high effort, defensive focused is what I think Drew Eubanks is. Yuta Watanabe is a little different. He's extremely high effort, but we'll talk about his defense in a little bit. Relatively versatile defensively. Bigs can only be so much. There's, if you're extremely versatile defender as a big, you're probably making a ton of money. You're not going to be available at the minimum. But for a minimum guy, he's relatively versatile. Scheme wise, at least, versatility is there. Like, he's not just a guy that has to drop. He can probably get out on the perimeter and trap at the very least. The Suns are probably going to ice a lot. We haven't talked a lot about Frank Vogel scheme-wise, but the Suns are probably going to ice a lot, which means forcing guys to the perimeter in pick and rolls instead of down the middle. The Lakers ran like a no-middle strategy when Vogel was their coach.
Baseline,
forcing them to the baseline to avoid those easy corner three-point attempts because the ball's already there in the corner, and they're trying to like funnel them into the big. And as far as ice, like that style of defense goes, I think Drew Eubanks is perfect for that. The other thing is, he's young. He's not an old guy.
Gambo was right, man.
Yeah, they're not signing 35-year-olds here. He's 26 last season.
They didn't. I think it's telling that they didn't sign Kevin Love last night. You know, who's probably a guy who has a established relationship with James Jones, for example.
Yeah.
And there's a reason we've talked about Kevin Love for 10 years at various points. Suns fans have. But yeah, I think it says something that they went with less of a known product. Drew Eubanks has. He's started 50 combined games for the Blazers the past 2 years, but to be honest, the Blazers were not very good in the past 2 years, and they were even worse in the games where Drew Eubanks had to start because he was not the full-time starter. He was the backup. They went only 9-19 with Drew Eubanks in the 28 games that he started last season, Mike, so not very good. They were 24-30 when he didn't start, so a little bit better. I think that's just natural because it kind of reflects their depth situation. But that's when Eubanks was playing with just Damian Lillard and sometimes not even him, versus now where he's going to be in a situation with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, obviously. So it's going to be much, much better for him. I guess the question here is...
The thing about young players is they can still improve. This is an important thing to point out with young guys like this. We're talking about who he is. He could be better this season. It's not like Kevin Love, who will more than likely be worse every season of his career until he retires. This is a guy who could be better over the course of the next few years.
This is important. I need to hold your feet to the flame a little bit here.
Sure.
Do you think Drew Eubanks could start for the Suns team?
I think
he'd be more than just the Jock Landale replacement?
He would be an acceptable starter. Would he be a good starter as a center? No. Do the Suns necessarily need a good starter? Well, if Ayton's gone, a lot of that depends on who they trade DeAndre Ayton for. Could they all of a sudden bring back a really high-quality wing or high-quality point guard even, I think that's something that you could probably get away with if it was Drew Eubanks.
Does he meet the Kevon Looney minimum standard of acceptableness as what a starting center needs to be?
Yeah, that's a good way of describing
on a championship team.
Yeah.
I think he could do that. Doesn't mean I'm in a rush to trade Ayton.
Of course,
something that's
and
not
you could still get
return,
a center back for DeAndre, and if you trade him, right, you could, Zubats is out there right now potentially, or there could be other guys out there.
I think it's important to note because, like, after watching this guy for a little bit, and particularly what he's been doing on defense for the past couple of years, I feel like I could envision him starting, and it would make me just a tiny bit more comfortable than Jock Landale starting for this team. Which
the defensive numbers for Eubanks,
feel comfortable with that concept.
We haven't said it yet, but the defensive numbers for Eubanks, the way that the tracking stats look, are really good. He has a lot of good rim percentage, like contesting shots.
Yeah,
he has a really good block percentage. Yeah, feel free to go through them. I have them too, but feel free if you have them.
Well, I don't have all of them, but I just want to point out this is from B-Ball Index. Ayton, to just compare to where he was versus Ayton. Ayton contested 6.3 shots per 75 possessions. All of their stats they do on a per possession basis to keep guys on an even playing field. So Ayton contested 6.3 shots last season per 75. Eubanks is at 10.9, significantly more.
Which is
His block rate
in the 99th percentile of the NBA on a per minute basis.
His block rate is over double what Ayton's was last season. The percentage at which he held opponents at the rim was significantly lower than what Ayton's was. So, I don't think anyone thinks Ayton's rim protection is his best skill at this point in his career. But just to demonstrate, like I had people asking me on Twitter yesterday to compare the two. And Eubanks he had better numbers across the board versus what Ayton provided as a rim protector. And furthermore, by the way, Eubanks has a 6'11" wingspan. So the fact that he can do this, given his natural tools, like to be able to block that many shots with a 6'11" wingspan is really impressive.
He can
You
fly.
basically need to have a crazy motor, a good vertical, and just like high awareness and intelligence to be able to have also the intuition to get to where you want to go and cover a lot of ground. It's really impressive all around.
I mentioned the highlights lie, but you should still watch them for him. They're of all the players the Suns signed, his highlights are the only ones that are like exciting. He goes up there with one hand on dunks a lot and tries to posterize guys. And also, you can find a lot of instances where he's posterized. And why is that? Not afraid. He's just not afraid. He will go at guys who are trying to dunk at him and try to block it. And he occasionally does block it. But the point is, not afraid of that contact at the rim, not afraid to get dunked on. You want guys who are not afraid to get dunked on. So, it's nice to see some of those highlights at the very least, because that fear of contact is something that we've seen from centers in the Suns in the past. And if you're, like I said, if you're replacing Jock Landale, the defense has to be good, because overall, I mean, the Suns in the Nuggets series, did you know this, Sam? The Suns were only outscored when Jock Landale was on the floor in one game. And in that game, he only played really 5 minutes. Yeah. I mean, the Suns were really good when he was on the floor throughout the postseason. Like I said, only outscored once versus the Nuggets. So, you got to really be confident in the type of person he's going to be. One thing I will say, his adjusted box out rate, this is another stat that I like to look at for bigs, is essentially exactly the same as DeAndre Ayton's. So when it comes to boxing out, not a big guy when it comes to boxing out. It's probably going to be a high point rebounder as well. The rebounding numbers for him, he grades out as a really good offensive rebounder and an okay defensive rebounder. So that's something to really know about.
I'm not sure Jock was... I didn't look at Jock's data there because, we're not going to have him, but I'm not sure he would grade out much better as a rebounder.
I agree.
Just based
it's probably
on the
pretty
eye test,
similar.
So
yeah.
It's probably... Yeah, I mean, Jock did not throw his body around like one of the best rebounders in the NBA, let's just say.
I just think these guys are often going to be really open in a way that other teams would not have gotten them open.
For sure.
And I think, Portland was pretty good at that overall because they had Dame, but now, playing with 3 superstars or at least 3 all-stars is different than one. And he's going to be really open, rolling to the rim quite a bit. And for a guy like him who is not afraid of really dunking on guys at the rim, I think we're going to get some really fun highlights from him, and I think we're going to have a good time watching him. And look, the numbers between the Jock Landale, Kevin Durant pick and roll were pretty high last year. They're probably going to be pretty high when it comes to Drew Eubanks as well. I have a feeling. Kevin Durant's a big part of that.
No doubt. Yeah, I have a feeling Kevin Durant may have been more or less behind all of these signings in terms of giving away. We know at least one of these guys, Kevin Durant, was obviously vouching for. And maybe that's who we should talk about next. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was aware of multiple of them.
Let's talk about Yuta.
Yeah.
It's a good transition because this part we could almost take that. I posted a clip of him on his podcast, Durant, talking about Yuta. We could almost just copy and paste that part into here because Durant was perfect at analyzing Yuta's game from what we could tell.
We could do that. We could do that if you want. We could just take the next 45 seconds and
just
play
sit here
that
silently. But I mean, Yuta, this was one of those guys where we kind of knew he was coming to the Suns, right? We just kind of knew. It was reported like a week ago, more than a week ago, that this was likely going to happen, and people were just sort of openly talking about if he was like an all-star, the Suns would be being investigated right now for tampering, but he's not, so it's probably going to be fine. 44% from 3 last year, massive improvement year over year for Yuta from 3. That's important to point out. 51% from the corners. If he continues that rate of shooting at a higher usage, which I think he will have here on the Suns, even than the Nets, the Suns have never, it's been a very long time since they've had a shooter like this, and never during Devin Booker's tenure.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Who
think
would be close?
It depends on how high of a volume. If you're just talking about guys who are going to play 15 minutes a game, Damian Lee was a fantastic shooter last year. I mean, he was statistically one of the best shooters in the NBA.
That's true.
But I think what Yuta has going for him is he's got this potential where he could shoot like Damian Lee, but be 6 inches taller and also attack closeouts and be a better defender, right? So when you factor all of those things into it, it becomes clear in your choice of who you would rather play.
If it scales, right, it's closer to Cam Johnson.
If it scales, and of course that's the big part. You know, he raised his career average in the corners to 41% for his entire career after this season. As you said, 51% this season. And yeah, he needs to continue to prove it on volume, but it's a hell of a good start. You can see why KD would want to play with a guy like that. In the quote that we were talking about from KD's podcast, what he really appreciated in Yuta's game was, again, motor. That's the common theme here.
It really
like
is.
A guy who he would constantly see just falling on the ground and, chasing after loose balls and being like, hey man, we need you. Like, I appreciate the hustle, but we also need you to stay healthy. We need you on the court. But that's, again, what you're going to see. Like, not necessarily in the fact that I don't think Yuta's the type of guy who he's going to get 5 deflections per game and, all of his defensive stats aren't the best, but he plays with effort. He has more physical and athletic tools than some of the guys we've had on the team recently that we've played at the wing positions, and all of that stuff is going to make a big difference.
He has he's decisive when he catches the ball at the 3-point line, meaning that he can shoot it. He's good at relocating. Durant said it best, he just knows where to be on the court, but good at finding the passing lanes in the open spots for 3, moving around somebody like Durant and his gravity. Now imagine the gravity of the other 2 guys and even DeAndre Ayton at the rim. There could be a lot of open shots for him on this team. There should be. Just look at what happened in the playoffs. They weren't even guarding 2 of the guys in the Suns starting lineup in Chris Paul and Josh Okogie. You can't do that with Yuta.
And they couldn't afford, to the point I was kind of making earlier, like, yeah, maybe they had Damian Lee, who didn't play in the playoffs, as a great shooter off the bench. They couldn't afford to play him because he would just be targeted on defense. Yuta, it feels like that would be much less of the case. He's going to keep your entire rotation consistent. Everyone's 6'6" or above, basically, if you do commit to playing point book. I guess Beal is like 6'4". But everyone's 6'4" or above. That there's no Damian Lees, there's no Chris Pauls, there's no even Landry Shamits on the court, who are just these little short scrubs.
And if he catches it on the wing, I know Monty's gone, but 0.5 is a basketball system in and of itself, Monty or not. But having someone who's decisive when they catch the ball, meaning they know when they're going to shoot and they understand when to drive and pass or drive and attack or pass immediately, that's really important to get the ball moving, because what's going to happen on the Suns is there's 3 guys who on certain nights are going to have to be doubled. And when those doubles come, moving the ball quickly, making decisive reads when the ball's pinging around, if you will, the perimeter, it's going to be really important. And Yuta can do that. And I think that's going to be really helpful. Just having a guy who runs around all over the place, relocates off the ball. Like I said, Cam Johnson did that. Torrey Craig couldn't. Josh Okogie couldn't. And for guys who can move around and find their spots off the ball from 3, that puts a lot of pressure on defenses. Even when Torrey Craig was shooting 39% or Josh Okogie was shooting 37%, the type of pressure, if Yuta shoots the same percentage, the type of pressure that he puts on them is going to be dramatically different because of the types of threes that he can potentially get off if his shooting continues in the way that it did last year. This was an incredible signing at a minimum deal for the Suns. It just is, because it's just a high-level guy. Can he defend? Is the question, right? Probably not good enough to start.
Okay. If that's the question, that's an entirely different question.
Right?
I'm rating this as like, can he play 15 minutes? Not can he start?
Absolutely. He absolutely can play 15 minutes, but he probably can't. Do they become unguardable if he's in the starting lineup? Yeah, they do. They really do. I just don't understand what a team is going to do when you have a team like this. Like, who do you put on who? It's going to be fascinating. You put point guards on Yuta Watanabe and they're helping off the ball. I don't even know.
And then he's got open corner threes like again
over and over again. Right?
I mean, he would be the best possible pressure release valve to inject into that offense. Also, with what you're talking about with the 0.5 thing, I did have this written down here, so I just want to point out 48 assists to 22 turnovers. An assist turnover ratio here of over 2. That's very, very good for a small forward.
Right.
And even though Monty Williams is gone, I think this is almost more of a James Jones thing than it is a Monty Williams thing. Like, you can go back and look at every single signing James Jones has ever made, and strong assist turnover ratios, regardless of position, seems like one of those things that just every player the Suns sign ever is going to have an above average assist turnover ratio. It's been very important to their identity over the past few seasons, and Yuta is just another one of those guys.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
There's a theme with these guys. We mentioned it. Effort.
Gives a
energy,
shit about basketball.
Motor. Effort. Energy. Motor. It is a theme with all of these guys. Drew Eubanks and Yuta are no different when it comes to effort and energy and motor. And Durant, in his analysis of Yuta, when we looked at it when they were playing on the Nets, he said that he almost told him, like you said, he has to almost cool down out there because he's flying around all over the place. He's worried about him getting injured or hurt because he has no regard for his body or his health. He's just one of those guys that flies around. And look, if you surround star players with those types of guys, they're going to earn their money. They're going to earn their money. And I think Yuta's going to be somebody who's capable of doing that. If you want to talk about his defense and what he could potentially do, he's probably going to have to be the guy that you kind of hide defensively. You're not going to put him on high usage rate players. He can't really guard big. He can't really guard small. He's going to be guarding basically positionally. And, guys like him who are at the three-point line and there to catch and shoot, those are probably going to be the guys that he's on. Can he help? Yeah, he's a smart help defender. He's going to reach in there and try to get in passing lanes occasionally, or if guys are driving, try to poke the ball free. He will do that because he's high effort and high energy, but it's not because he's got extremely long arms and he is actually extremely athletic, but he's not going to be in there like Mikal Bridges or anything. Don't expect that.
He's fairly athletic. He can drive the ball. He can finish. He can dunk
He's
on
fast.
offense.
Yeah.
But I think it's just what you're saying. Like, he knows where to be on defense. He can be a helper. That's a very different thing from being a point of attack defender who's constantly bursting through screens and chasing guys around. And you really need a high level of flexibility, speed, composure, all of these various elements that combine into your defensive game. It's just he's not that. That's okay, because I don't think we need him to be that either.
Talking about the theme between these guys, this will be one of the things that kind of brings us back home on this podcast here, but Drew Eubanks is fast in transition, runs hard. Yuta Watanabe, fast in transition, runs hard. Also young. Not as young as you would think with Yuta.
28.
He's 28, yeah. But he's not
old.
He's
not again, they could have signed some 34-year-old.
Eric Gordon, for example.
Yes. Yeah, they could have Eric Gordon and Kevin Love, and it is very interesting the fact that they specifically went with this strategy, and now they have Drew Eubanks.
They want to run
instead.
Sam, they want to run.
I think when we're looking
at the guys that they signed, to me, I'm hearing run. This team is going to be. It's not Chris Paul ball anymore. This is going to be Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant on the wings. One of those guys holding the ball with Yuta running to the 3-point line and Drew Eubanks running to the rim. And then you have a defense trying to figure out who to guard out of those 5 guys. If DeAndre Ayton actually runs, then he could be one of those guys running. But didn't happen in the playoffs. But I just you look at the theme with these guys and you can just tell what they're trying to put together, and it's really exciting. Someone compared the roster to the 2021 Lakers, and it's like, no, these guys are young, they're athletic,
yeah.
They're not old, they're not washed.
That was one of the oldest teams ever assembled.
Yeah,
ever,
and they're not
had an
doing
average
that.
age of probably 32.
Yeah. What else? Anything else on Yuta?
Yuta, no. I will just, if this can be our transition here, it's going to be fascinating because, look, I guess we're 30 minutes in and we haven't even mentioned yet the concept of, are the Suns done? The Suns are not done. They're obviously not done.
Yeah.
At the most basic level, just in the sense that they have an open roster spot. But I think even beyond that, there are some interesting things that they could do. They could still bring Torrey Craig back and, at that last roster spot, and then they would be done. They could trade DeAndre Ayton. Obviously, we've talked about that a bunch.
Yeah.
But there are a bunch of things that they could do. Isaiah Todd, we're assuming, he has a roster spot right now. I count him as one of the 14 players they have. I don't know if he's going to be there in September.
I think probably not.
It
if I had
feels
to
like
guess, yeah.
They could.
It doesn't make sense.
They have one roster spot right now. They could easily create a second one. Toumani Camara also, I think I counted a couple days ago as a guy who'd have a roster spot. Now, after seeing what the Suns have done, I would anticipate him more being a two-way contract.
They could have up to 3 roster spots open, which gives you flexibilities in a trade, I want to mention.
Right.
If they just signed these guys in the ways that we think they could, or even cut Todd.
So right now, we're in a situation where we could re-sign Torrey Craig still. We have his bird rights, as we explained. We have not re-signed him. And so you look at some of the guys who have the potential to be that 5th starter for the Suns, and you've got Yuta, Josh Okogie, obviously, and the next guy who we should talk about now, which is Keita Bates-Diop. I think you look at all 3 of those, though, and we're not necessarily assuming that any of them are going to be the 5th guy. I think there could be much better candidates, potentially, and the Suns could still be working up something. But for now, it kind of feels like those are the 3 guys where maybe you're thinking about how would that training camp battle look.
Yeah.
I think it would be really intense between those 3 guys and high energy, high motor out of all 3 of them. I mean, Okogie, we don't even need to talk about. The Suns re-signed Josh Okogie. We know who Josh Okogie is. He's that dude. Never takes a play off. I don't know if he's going to play minutes. He needs to earn it, but he's awesome. And then the 3rd guy, Keita Bates-Diop, we could talk about now.
To me, this guy's in the lead of the 5th starter potentially.
I agree.
Just after
for now,
I watched so much film this morning. I knew who Yuta was. I knew who Drew Eubanks was. I didn't watch the Spurs last year, and this is his best year in Keita Bates-Diop. Right? I knew who he was as a player. I had familiarity with him. I needed to watch some stuff, and I spent all morning doing my research on Keita Bates-Diop, and I'm excited, man. I'm
all morning
excited.
On just him, him.
I mean, I did some research on the other 2 guys yesterday, so this morning was dedicated to old KBD. I don't know what we're going to call him. He seems like a guy that's like prime for a nickname here. But Keita Bates-Diop, he played for the Spurs. The Spurs were awful. And this is one of those cases where a team being awful benefited someone in Keita Bates-Diop because he had the opportunities to show the kind of player that he's capable of being. And what he showed to me is the type of player that would thrive on a good team. Even though he'd played well for the Spurs on a bad team, he has the type of skill set that fits and makes sense around good players because he does a lot of the things that good players often can't because of the types of things that they're asked to do on the court. So he slots in really nicely around these guys. One, tall guy, extremely long arms. And
longer than Mikal Bridges. We covered that on the last episode.
7'3" is his wingspan.
Mikal was 7'1" for comparison. This guy's got a 7'3" wingspan.
7'3", and he's 6'8". So right, same size as Yuta, but the lengthwise, their standing reach is going to be dramatically different because of how long his arms are. He can get into passing lanes. He can muck things up defensively. He runs, and I mean runs in transition. This big, giant 6'8" guy with long arms, full stride in transition, tries to get to the rim. 68% at the rim. Can't get there on his own, right? He needs some help, which is why he fits around stars. You got to pass it to him on his way to the rim or at the rim, but can finish when he's there. And shot 39% from 3 last season on quite a bit of attempts. Like, it wasn't a small amount of attempts. And he seems like a really great option for a role player when it comes to minimum deals.
I want to read out. Let me see how many attempts. Yeah, he shot 142 threes overall last season. Only a couple per game because this is a guy who was playing 20 minutes per game. He wasn't playing 36 minutes, but it's not a bad sample size for a guy who shot 39%. If that could be real, his career percentage is only 34%. But if he's closer to the 39% now, then I mean, it's just going to unlock so much about his
the
game.
most he's taken at the highest percentage, which is usually a good sign with these guys, right?
Again, we've already said this, but like there is potential here. A reason why maybe some of these guys were so excited to come to the Suns within an hour free agency opening. It's not just about the fact that they want to win championships. It's also they're looking at guys like Bruce Brown, who now signed for a contract worth over $22 million a year with the Indiana Pacers, and they smell the same sort of opportunity opening up on Phoenix. There are going to be the 3 stars, yes. But one of these guys here who we don't anticipate could potentially be a 5th starter or a 6th man or even an 8th man playing 15 minutes per game. But all of those guys are going to have their opportunities to shine in big moments in the playoffs. And the more you get recognized at that level, like the more likely it is that it would be sad for us, of course, if they play really well and then go sign somewhere else for 10 times the pay. But that's just how the NBA works, and you kind of accept that that is the natural process to the ecosystem, and some of them are obviously thinking about that in their futures. Let me read you Keita Bates-Diop's stats. Just as a starter for the Spurs last year in 42 starts, he averaged 12.6 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2 assists on a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, so another good ratio. He shot 50% from the field, 41% from deep, and 78% from the free throw line. That's like rookie Mikal Bridges numbers, you know, like it's like that's a good starter. It's not like a $15 million a year player maybe, but those are good numbers. Those are good numbers. And if you can imagine plugging that into being our 5th starter when we already have 3 stars in DeAndre Ayton, the potential there is
He's
absurd.
27. I want to mention again.
Another young player.
A young player, 27. This is a player basically
older than Devin Booker, but
all 3 of
still
these guys
comparatively young.
All 3 of these guys in Keita Bates-Diop, Drew Eubanks, Yuta Watanabe are in their athletic prime when they're here on the Suns. Like, this is their try-hard seasons, right? This is when they're peaking athletically, and this is just a good situation for him to be in. I love that you said Bruce Brown there, because there is opportunities to prove yourself, especially in the playoffs when the lights are the brightest, where they can make a ton of money playing well on this team.
It truly is Moneyball, man. We can't afford Bruce Brown. Fuck it. Let's get the next Bruce Brown. One of these guys might be the next Bruce Brown, you know, and we don't know that for certain, but some of the statistical indicators, it looks promising for some of these guys.
The shortest 3 on the court is the corner 3. The longest 3 is above the break, right? Because that's where you space the floor the most. That's why guys like Steph Curry, Dame Lillard are really valuable. He shot 39% total from 3, but 41% above the break, so at the top of the key, which is where he shot the majority of his threes, 56% of his threes. The shooting stats are weird for Keita Bates-Diop. Did you know this one, Sam? Right corner 3, 48% from 3. Left corner 3, 28% from 3. Isn't that weird?
I'm gonna guess like he probably only took maybe around 35, 40 shots in each pocket.
That's exactly right. 35 exactly from left 3, 27.
Sample size thing. I'm gonna chalk that one up to variance.
83s from above the break. 83s from above the break, where he shot 41%, which I think is the biggest and most important number. If you're setting screens, right, the Suns are running double drag with him and a roller, say Durant, DeAndre Ayton, Drew Eubanks if he's coming off the bench. And he's popping out to the top of the key, and that 3 goes down at 41. What do you do? How do you guard that? I just don't understand what you do in that scenario, because that is a 61% effective field goal percentage on that shot. It's worth a lot of points to make 41% of threes from above the break. And you're also spreading the defense thin.
If he does spread the defense and consistently proves his worth as a shooter and people start closing out on him, another thing I really like about his game, he gets to the free throw line. He gets to the free throw line within his role. So he's not a guy, if you look at his stats, he's not averaging 6 or 7 free throw attempts per game, because you need to be someone who shoots the ball 15 or 20 times typically to do that. But his free throw attempt rate, the advanced stat, the ratio at which he gets to the free throw line, like his free throw attempts per field goal attempts, if you compare that to everyone on the Suns roster last year, his falls just below KD and Book. The only role player on the Suns last year who he falls beneath is Josh Okogie, who, if you got to give Josh Okogie credit for anything on offense, he is a boulding block. Like, he just tumbles his way to the rim, and he's fantastic at that. Like, he gets fouled.
He has no regard for his own health and safety.
He's incredible. But Keita Bates-Diop not too far behind, and especially definitely ahead of the Torrey Craigs, ahead of the Landry Shamits, the Damian Lees, the guys who kind of just like get in there and throw up a little dinky floater and are afraid of contact on this team last year. He is not one of those. So I like the fact that he can get to the free throw line as well.
And he's
play
got
a
some
little bit
moves.
of Morey ball.
He's got some moves at the rim, right? He can turn over his shoulder. He can shoot little floaters. He can throw it off the backboard off the rim, you know?
His floater does suck. I just want to throw out one
You want
weakness.
him to try to dunk on someone if he's rolling. Like, that's the best case for him, for sure.
The NBA's website actually tracks the percentage on floaters, and I'm a pro floater guy, for the record. I love the floater. I love the fact that the floater, like, this is one of the reasons I love in the whole block versus charge debate. I love players who can develop floaters and make it just totally a moot point. Like, just hit your floaters so that you don't have to worry about guys taking a charge on you. Don't be a Giannis Antetokounmpo, in other words. But, like, Keita Bates-Diop shot 29% on floaters last year. He tried 59 of them. Maybe just don't take as many of those this year if it's working for you that poorly, because, like, 29% is really bad. But for the most part, he does have some moves, and he can get to the rim, and he can shoot the three. It's great role player.
And the passes are not bad when he's making them on his way to the rim, right? They're, you know, he's not Draymond or anything, but he can actually make the right reads. You mentioned the assist to turnover ratio. I don't think he'll be a screener that often, though. That's the advantage of him. He's tall, he's big, but you can still play him with KD and a center, you know, potentially. This is not the case where he has to play power forward. He can guard multiple positions. Now, I will say just on his finishing real quick, and then I want to talk about defense. B-Ball Index does this thing where it's like a conversion rate at the rim. So when you catch it at the rim, what happens? And you're talking about floaters, and yeah, the floaters are not great. But when he catches it at the rim, defended or not, he gets it in the basket quite a bit. He actually has some moves when finishing there. So when it comes to the Suns, giving it to him in the right spots will be important when it comes to his actual finishing numbers. But I think he's a smart enough player off the ball to get to those spots, and I think that he'll be pretty effective offensively if he's able to be maximized. Like so much of these guys, there is some level of shooting variance. With Yuta, we're hoping that his shooting stats continue to be flaming Joe Harris hot, of course. And then same with Keita Bates-Diop. You know, he was left open quite a bit on the Spurs, and he probably will be left open quite a bit.
He's going to be a proven shooter still, for sure. I mean, it's on scouting reports, like career guy still below 35%. Even though he had one good season, he has to prove it.
Exactly. So those are the three main guys I think that I was really excited about. One thing I'll say, actually, let's quickly talk about Keita Bates-Diop's defense, because if you look at some of the defensive numbers for him, if you look at some of the advanced stats defensively, you probably won't be all that impressed. You're probably going to wonder, are we sure he's a great defender? And the truth is, not really. I'm not 100% certain that he's going to be a great defender. He is positionally versatile defensively in that he's guarded a lot of different positions for the Spurs. That could be more of a personnel thing than anything else. Maybe his best role is to guard a little bit bigger. I don't think he's going to be out there chasing around point guards very often. That's just my guess. The chase down blocks are pretty incredible when you watch him play. That's the length and size thing defensively. But I think there's two things that I want to keep track of. I mentioned this on the Discord this morning when it comes to him defensively, or I want to keep in mind when trying to analyze him. One, when I watched him, I was like, this guy should be great. You know, you're just watching him move around, you're looking at his body and like the types of things he can do, recover defensively, helper defense roles. It's like he should be great. You just look at him. He should be great. And I think that matters somewhat. Two, the Spurs were not very good. Right? So he's probably asked to do a lot on the Spurs and recover for a lot. And if a team defense falls apart, a lot of these tracking stats are not good defensively still. They're just not. You can't really figure out how good these guys are going to be defensively using stats. You kind of have to watch. And I think the way he's set up, the way he moves around defensively, my expectation is that he will be maximized on a good team in a way that he was not maximized on a bad team. And I think he will actually be a really good defender on the Suns. I think it's a really good fit.
I think the positional versatility is clear. You talked about Vogel probably wanting to run an ice scheme. I don't know how much we're going to be switching with this team. I think in theory, if the Suns have a lineup of guys where no one is shorter than 6'4", they could switch a lot. And if they do decide to do that, then Bates Diop is one of the first guys you think of who slots into that. I think he could really clearly switch at positions 2 through 4. Might run into some trouble against centers and point guards, but overall the tools are there. So we'll just see. We'll have to see.
You put him out on an
He puts
island.
in practice.
You put him out on an island with the point guard with 6 seconds left on a shot clock. Well, then you're just like, well, he's 6'8" and he has a 7'3" wingspan. So at the very least, they're going to try to launch over him, right?
He'll try his best and contest a shot. It's not the end of the world.
But it's not going to be your first option to switch him out on the point guards on the perimeter. It probably won't be. But you know what? Young and can still improve. Just once again, there's a theme with all these guys. I think we talked about it. They're fast, they're athletic, they have high motors, they're young, and they're hungry. And
they're hot. They're hip.
Yeah.
They're, what's the other
they eat at the
adjective
best
that Gambo
restaurants.
used?
Yeah.
They dress well.
Yeah.
Brad Beal showing up with the suit. I hope all these guys wear suits at their various introductory press conferences.
The last guy is Chimezie Metu, who the Suns did sign. And I think a lot of people are looking at this and going, why? And I think that's fair. It's kind of the more confusing one of the 4, unless you look at them all together and you realize that he's a high motor, younger player who's hungry to compete.
An athlete.
An athlete, yeah.
Jump out of the gym athlete, too.
Is he
which
good?
I think matters.
Not really.
But let's just say the other 3 guys who we've talked about so far are clearly competing for, at the very least, second string positions and maybe even a starting position. Metu is the first guy where it's clear this is a third stringer. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to play. There are going to be injuries at various points throughout the regular season, and he will have to play, but he will start as a third stringer.
Yeah. He's just sort of a high-energy big who tries to block a lot of shots. And that's just who he's going to be on the Suns. And I think he'll occasionally play some games. You know, I think if you look at sort of Drew Eubanks as a Jock Landale replacement, I think you could probably think of Metu as a Bismack Biyombo replacement. Busy, more effective overall defensively, but Metu's still young and maybe has the ability to improve a little bit.
One thing that's really interesting to me here that I just don't know the answer to, I would love to talk to a more knowledgeable Kings fan or someone who covers the Kings about this. Basketball Reference says Metu logged 68% of his minutes at power forward last year because he is a little bit on the shorter side. Does have a 7-foot wingspan, or 7 foot and maybe half an inch. So he's a little longer than, say, Drew Eubanks. But 68% at power forward versus 32% at center. He's really a guy who doesn't have any offensive skill at this point. He tries to shoot threes,
but can't.
But he shot 31%. He shot 31% from 3 2 seasons ago, and then last year dipped into the 20s. He's been trying to be more of a spacer, and if he could find a way to become more of a spacer, then I can envision him at power forward kind of playing in some bigger lineups. Otherwise, it does feel like he has to be a little bit more of a small center. But I would love to talk to a Kings fan just about isolating some of those minutes at power forward center versus, seeing if there was a situation that clearly felt like more of a natural fit for him.
They let him launch threes in Sacramento in 21-22.
They let
186 threes he shot in that 21-22 season. Shot 30%.
Over 40% of his all attempts were threes. And
they were trying
31%.
to see if he was a power forward, basically, right? They were trying to see
the Jalen Smith thing.
They gave him a season to try, and I think it's clear that he's probably best fit at center. Maybe he can play some small ball center minutes if KD's on the floor at the 4, and you could work out minutes that way, where it's sort of he kind of still is a power forward, but we're playing small. But he's, I think we're probably going to learn a lot more about him when we watch him play than we can from stats. He didn't play a ton in Sacramento either, so there's just not a lot out there when it comes to Metu.
Well, it's just if his offense is going to look anything like it did in Sacramento, then we just know going into the season the only thing we can expect out of him, other than the occasional 3, which we'll see if they let him take those or not, is lob catcher, transition finisher, and dunker spot. He's gonna be the guy sitting in the pocket underneath the rim in the dunker spot, waiting for the dump off passes. And if you've got a roster full of, first of all, not only Booker, Beal, and Durant who can do their work as playmakers, but the rest of these guys that we're talking about, the Watanabes, the Bates, Diops, who all have positive assist turnover ratios, and they're attacking closeouts too. Metu can be sitting underneath the basket and ready to finish those off. He actually scored 1.5 points per possession as a cutter last season, which ranked in the 89th percentile. A lot of those possessions came from the dunker spot, where it's kind of stupid, but the NBA's website will like log some of those possessions as like a really short cut, even though it's not like a cut from the perimeter. But so that's what his role is going to be on offense. And, I think he can at least excel in that. I think he's going to impress people with his leaping ability, and he's going to try and tear the rim off sometimes. And just that will excite some fans.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at the very least, he's high effort, high energy, like we talked about with the rest of these guys. And he'll try to block some shots. He'll try to throw it down. And as a rebounder, positionally, if he's a center, he's an okay rebounder. If he's a power forward, he's a great rebounder. So, it depends on the types of minutes he ends up playing. Maybe the Suns try 2 big lineups at certain points with Metu, but I doubt it. I don't think he's going to be getting a ton of minutes, most likely, so I don't know that we have to spend a ton of time on him. But if the roster starts changing or adapting, then maybe we can break him down a little bit more. We do have a little bit more to talk about before we get to an hour here. The Suns are also retaining Damian Lee and Josh Okogie. Both were unrestricted free agents. Josh Okogie was someone that you speculated in the past could potentially sign for more than a minimum, did end up signing essentially for the minimum, or what the Suns could sign him for a slight raise when it came to the minimum deal because he stayed on the Suns, and then Damian Lee returned at the minimum deal. It's pretty clear why both these guys were signed, and they were for exactly opposite reasons.
Literally exactly opposite reasons. Yeah. Damian Lee, going to shoot threes. We can trust him. Josh Okogie, we can trust him to pressure the shit out of you on defense. He never takes a possession off. Again, motor. How many of these guys have a rock solid motor? So, I don't know how many minutes either of them are going to earn, but I think both of them earned a spot at what they're being paid for.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it was smart. The two smart guys, excuse me, to retain on the Suns in Lee and Okogie.
I mean, I'll continue to say that if one of these seasons, and it would take a lot for this to happen, but if one of these seasons Josh Okogie comes back with a 40% three-point shot, he is instantly better than all of the other guys we just talked about.
He starts.
Because his defense is that impactful. He is
starts.
that awesome. But he just needs to be more than a 0 on offense.
He's in the running for that 5th starter right now. I think
he's in the running.
He is.
Yeah, I think Vogel might love him.
I personally would rather play huge with somebody like Keita Bates-Diop, where every guy on the floor is massive and you can just get out there and try and get in passing lanes and stuff. And every shot is hard because you're shooting over somebody taller than you. But I do think that Okogie is just in the running for that starting position just based on his ability to chase guys around. You play guys like Damian Lillard, maybe less if he ends up in the East, but Steph Curry, people who are running around screens pretty regularly. Even, I don't want to say that he did a good job against Jamal Murray, but even Jamal Murray, you have to have guys who can chase. And he is one of the best on the Suns at that right now, which is a bad sign, by the way. The Suns need more guys who can do that.
Sign, it's again a sign that I think they're not done and they will bring in someone else.
Yeah,
whether it's Torrey Craig or someone else, we don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I'm happy that both of them are back. I think that the player that played better than both of them in the playoffs, and Jock Landale not being back, is surprising. But when it comes to these minimum guys, there's rarely a scenario where one is like so much better than the other. Often you're just trying to find the best fit on the team positionally, and you kind of slot those guys in to try to maximize what they do best. So Jock Landale not being back, I think that's something that I'm currently disappointed in, but I am happy about the guys that they did sign so far. I think they absolutely nailed it. Damian Lee clearly going to be the guy that I think Damian Lee is a good locker room guy. Like, I think that's pretty clear. I think he's one of those types of guys where he's on the court, he's bringing guys together, he's talking a lot, he's not afraid of the other team. He will talk shit. And look, if he continues his hot shooting, that's great.
Hits big shots. Like, how many times did he do it in the fourth quarter last year? That was awesome about Damian Lee.
Shooting 68% from 3 in the fourth quarter halfway through the season.
Yeah, he's got big balls. Love it.
Yeah. So, obvious good guy to bring back. And then Josh Okogie, we know what it is defensively. I think Josh Okogie right now, I'm a little bit frustrated with him because I thought he was kind of awful in the playoffs. Not just on offense. Like, I expect what I expect from him offensively. I don't think he played very well defensively either. So I expect some level of improvement from Josh Okogie, or maybe a different scheme will be helpful for him defensively. But I expect some level of an improvement defensively from him in order to play more than what we saw in the playoffs. But either way, you need guys that play minutes in the regular season, and he's definitely good enough to do that. So it's a smart signing on a minimum deal either way. Any other thoughts on those two guys?
Nope.
Can we just quickly say Damian Lillard requested a trade?
Yes.
It finally happened today, and then Elon Musk decided we're not allowed to talk about it on Twitter.
So he's probably going to go to the Heat. Is that the report as of
That's where
now?
he seems to want to go. Ramona Shelburne said he also likes the Spurs, which I thought was funny and maybe true, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe he wants to play with Wemby.
I mean, the Spurs actually have the cap space to.
It's kind of fascinating, yeah.
I would support it.
I don't know.
I would
was like,
I would watch the crap out of that team.
Look,
I'm not gonna lie.
If I'm being 100% honest with everyone here, based on what the Suns did yesterday, I think they still intend on trading DeAndre Ayton. When that happens, I am not sure. Could it be in the regular season? Yeah, sure. I would prefer, if you're going to trade him, that you give a team a full season to be healthy and work together. So
I'm really split. I'm really split at this point. And the reason why is because, again, I firmly believe that the pattern that we've been talking about all episode here is they looked at guys based on their motors. They really did. And that could tell you one of two things. It could tell you specifically that they're trying to make up for the deficiencies of our star players, such as DeAndre Ayton's biggest weakness right now is his motor.
He's not a star player.
Or it could tell you that
he is a role player on this team.
It could tell you that they're sending a message of, like, we don't want you here if you're not going to give a shit every possession, and maybe it's a sign for him to pack his bags.
I just think, look, the reality of what the Suns did is they signed some guys that will play minutes in the playoffs, but they're still sort of they need. It would be nice to turn DeAndre into two players that are better than these minimum guys instead of just one who is occasionally better and occasionally not. You know, that to me, that's where I feel. But the reason I bring up DeAndre in relation to Damian Lillard, not to say that the Suns will trade for Damian Lillard, of course, which would be awesome, but just not going to happen. But it is to say that if something comes down with the Suns or with Damian Lillard being traded and it ends up being a 3-team trade, or even I think there's a chance with James Harden, I think there's a chance where that's where the Suns try and jump in. Because, for example, if Zubac is available in a trade with Philadelphia, can the Suns jump in and try to get Zubac in DeAndre and going somewhere else or something?
With the Clipper? Wait, what? What do you say?
James Harden going to the Clippers. Now Zubac is available. They want to re-sign Mason Plumlee.
Okay. Sorry, you said, yeah.
So, and then, or Dame going to the Heat, and all of a sudden now you have maybe the Portland Trailblazers would like DeAndre Ayton, to pair with Tyler Hero or whatever.
Do you want Jeremy Grant on $35 million a year that he just
not particularly, but would I do that?
his?
Maybe, yeah, I might still do that. Actually, but I don't think he would want to do that. But I just think there's a chance with these big giant pieces moving around that the Suns could do something relatively soon. I think Damian Lillard. I think if you're Damian Lillard, you're loyal to Portland for so long. You do so much for that franchise. You try to compete at the highest level. You try hard. Occasionally you're injured. Things happen. It is what it is. And you're watching Devin Booker do the same in Phoenix. And Portland is like, here's Scoot and here's an overpaid Jeremy Grant. And Phoenix is like, here's Kevin Durant and here's Bradley Beal. I think it makes sense that he has to leave.
Yeah, you just say enough is
loyalty.
Enough
Loyalty can be rewarded, or it can be something you take advantage of. In Devin Booker's case, I think it's been rewarded. In Damian Lillard's case, I think it's something that they have taken advantage of in Portland, and it's about time that he has to be moved. So I'm interested to see what happens there.
If he ends up in Miami, it's a scary team.
It's a fascinating team, that's for sure. Yeah,
it's a fascinating Eastern Conference rival. Really strong team, obviously, to make another run at a championship if that happens. Do you have any thoughts on what these other contenders are doing? None of these other contenders in the opening 24 hours really scared me with what they did at all. What are the Nuggets going to do? They still have that post-championship hangover. It seems they've gotten worse so far.
I actually thought the Lakers made some smart signings. To be honest, I'm not overly afraid of them overall. But I thought they did a pretty good job with their team. They were able to retain Austin Reeves. Gabe Vincent was it? Yeah, it was Gabe Vincent, right?
Gabe
signed
Vincent,
there as well.
yeah,
I think that Gabe Vincent signing on the MLE is a really good signing, and they still somehow kept D'Angelo Russell and all of that, which I'm not a huge fan of that. But you essentially replacing Dennis Schroeder with Gabe Vincent, I think that's an upgrade. That's a pretty big upgrade.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's an upgrade in terms of intelligence.
And then
by
yeah,
far.
intelligence and just overall
Basketball intelligence.
Yeah, an overall skill level that fits their team. I think Gabe Vincent makes more sense. You know, he's a capable pick and roll ball handler, but also he has the ability of launching from three off the ball, which is something they need. If they can have both of those things, that's good. I think Austin Reeves is a good player, and I thought they got him on a good contract. I will say one team that makes absolutely zero sense to me is Toronto. What the hell are they doing?
What,
You know,
can you
they're
remind
just
me,
running
what
it back in Toronto, but now with
what did
Dennis
they do?
Schroeder instead of
Fred
Van
with Dennis
Vliet.
Schroeder instead of Fred Van Vliet. They re-signed Pirtle, right?
And they
I can't
re-signed
remember.
Pirtle at a pretty big contract too. I
Yeah.
just don't and just look, it's a new coach, a coach that used to coach for the Suns, in Darko Rajakovic. Did they hate Nick Nurse that much?
They've
You know, that's
they've got-
kind of what I'm looking at. This, they must have fucking hated him.
I mean, I'll just say the offseason's not over. They've got time to address.
It's true.
But
It's true.
it feels like, you know, if in particular Siakam and Anunoby are still there in February, the vultures are going to be circling again because
Yeah.
you're right. That doesn't make a ton of sense. One other team I wanted to point out, I really like what the Oklahoma City Thunder are doing, man.
Right.
I think I continue to think that, you know, watch out. That to me could be a home court advantage playoff team if other Western rivals are not careful. They got Victor Oladipo, and they also, longtime listeners of the pod will remember, they got Vasilija Micic, who is
I know
who
we
is a
tried our
former,
hardest to pronounce it correctly. I remember
a
that.
former MVP at the EuroLeague level, who they signed for like $6 million a year, but is in the prime of his career in Europe. They're bringing him over. And we talked about him for an entire segment last summer, hoping that maybe the Suns would get him. They did not end up getting him. But yeah, I think, you know, they've got several good players now. All they need is kind of like, they've got one guy who you already know is elite in Shea. All they need is for Chet to stay healthy, and maybe if Giddey takes another leap or Jalen Williams takes another leap, and that team is going to be cooking. Like, they could actually be really good.
Yep, I think that's a good one. I was trying to think of another team that did not make sense to me. Like, how do you feel about? Oh, I remember the one, Milwaukee. I think they actually got Chris Middleton on a pretty good contract for them because he opted out of $40 million, ended up signing basically $30 million a year, and it kind of worked out for them in that case, long-term money. And then they signed Brook Lopez for $24 million. This is another example, I think, of a team just essentially running it back.
What leverage did they have?
Yeah, I know. They didn't have much opportunities to do.
Brooke was apparently entertaining an offer from Houston, and he had all the leverage there.
And they just completely overpaid him. Yeah, and so good for him. Yeah, but they're essentially running back the same team, older, and with a new coach.
Well, that's the first team that I think of when I'm like, oh yeah, if Miami actually gets Dame for actually not that much, I mean, they retain the Bam, Jimmy, Dame core. That's all that really matters.
Yeah, with Caleb Martin still.
I know they lost
they
Max Strus too for like, who cares? You know, like
yeah,
Max
another
Strus is
overpaid,
good. He's
by
not
the
that
way.
good. But like Milwaukee could be in trouble. They could be in trouble in the East.
Yep, I agree. Any other thoughts, free agency wise?
Nope. That's about it for now.
We were like, oh, we'll do 30 minutes on these new guys. By the way, we're over an hour now. This is just one of those weeks where there's just a lot to talk about. This will be our third podcast this week. That's over
all of
an
them
hour.
over an hour.
Some of them over an hour and 20. But yeah, it's been a fascinating week to really follow the NBA and follow the Suns. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. They still have open roster spots. They still have flexibility. And it could just be as simple as re-signing Torrey Craig and getting Eric Gordon on a minimum, which would be good. It could be a massive trade with DeAndre Ayton, which could be good, could be bad, depending on the return. But they do have opportunities and flexibility. And, of course, as always, we will be around to keep up with it as it happens. It's hard to schedule podcasts. So when something happens, we'll be back. And, of course, with a midweek Patreon podcast. Once again, if you'd like to join the Discord, now's a good time. Patreon.com/thetimeline. $3 a month for the Discord. $6 a month for an extra podcast every week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will be back very soon.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, blue label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.